I'm Liz Nicholson. I was Director of Shelter Scotland from 1995 to 2005. But prior to that, I'd been a campaigns worker in Scotland in the 80s. I've been thinking back, trying to remember what I was doing in the 80s. I think one of the issues was the impact of Right to Buy, because it was about 1988, 89 when I started there. Right to Buy was early 80s, so we were beginning to see that towards the end of the 80s, and the shortage of council housing for homeless people. That we had also, we had a young person project, people who were going down to London, who were homeless and going to London and ending up on the street in London, and moving them back to Scotland and reuniting them with their family. That was one of the areas that we worked in. And also the Scottish new towns were giving up their new town status and transferring their stock. And one of the things we were concerned about was whether people becoming homeless would have the same rights as they did as part of the Newtown Corporation housing, you know. So there was quite a lot going on, and we were also, you know, campaigning against Right to Buy very vigorously. We were out counting people on the streets of Glasgow because the minister at the time said there wasn't a problem in Scotland, you know, so, you know, we had to fight for it. So, but maybe you do need to sort of shock people, the government, and say, you know, tell them how many people there are out sleeping at night in this weather. But I mean, it really is down to hostel places and safe places. A lot of people who I speak to on the street, even now, I don't stop, they say they won't go into the hostels. So, you know, they've got to be safe places, and they've got to get support, because so many people are damaged who are out on the streets, whether it's mental health problems, alcohol and drug problems. They need support as well in order to sustain tenancies. The issue that was really close to my heart, and I'm going right back to the beginning of Shelter, was family homelessness. And when the Lotteries Fund started, and we were given a great deal of money to set up the families projects, that was really, that and the Homeless Task Force, getting the homelessness legislation, I think that was what I would look back on and say that was one of the best things we did. Finding, you know, people who have experienced domestic violence, who have a history of repeating homelessness because they can't sustain tenancies, they don't know how to. And we used to say, you know, talking to other people working in the field, not in housing field, but working with very vulnerable families, that these families, sometimes they hadn't been parented themselves, you know, the parents, and they found it very difficult to cope. But with the help of the family support workers, and what we had then were child support workers, you know, who were working separately with the children to overcome what they'd been through and what they had seen in their short lives. And having success there, that people were able to sustain tenancies. That I think was really, yeah, one of the sort of big gold stars that we got then. It's very difficult looking back and saying you were a success anywhere, given in terms of campaigning, given the situation that homeless people are in now, which I think is probably worse than it was at that time in a lot of ways. You have to think, well, what would it be like if Shelter wasn't there? Because over the 50 years that Shelter's been around, you know, they've helped thousands of people prevent homelessness and help them find housing when they have been homeless. The housing aid centres, you know, the law service has advised so many people and won cases and got into case law. We put down a number of proposals around homelessness and what would help homelessness, and we ended up, and I think this is a fantastic achievement, and it's down to the campaigns team that was working when I was here, that we actually got all of our proposals into the new homelessness legislation in the 90s. There was such a willingness to listen and to try and resolve some of the issues. But it's legislation, and unless you've got the money behind it, you know, for building houses and providing support services to people, you're not going to end the homelessness, you know. But nevertheless, I mean, we were recognised as having the best homelessness legislation in Scotland, in Europe, and you know, that was great.